everybody. I'm going to make a Gouda cheese seasoned with hot chilies. If you've been watching my cheese making videos, I think probably my first hard cheese that I made was a Gouda. I'm doing it again. Hopefully I've learned and improved a little bit, I guess, over the last couple of years. But I'm doing several things different than I did it before. The last one was a 2-pound cheese made in a small mold. This will be a 4-pound cheese, and I'm using a large Edam cheese mold. And I've never done one before with seasoning, so I thought I would do another video. What I'm starting with here is some of my own chilies that I dehydrated. I think there's 5 in there, and then there's probably 3 different kinds. Aleppo and Thai and what else? Matchbox, I think. They're all in there. I don't know if it's actually necessary to dehydrate them or not. Couldn't find a recipe for a Gouda using chilies, but I could find them with other dry ingredients, in particular caraway seeds. Gouda is quite often done with caraway seeds. I do not like caraway seeds. Just the thoughts of eating them makes me nauseous. There's something about it, if I'm allergic to them or what, but I've never liked the taste of caraway. Anytime that I buy Gouda at a farmer's market, that's the first thing I ask, because it got caraway seeds in it. Or rye bread. For some reason they seem to stick caraway seeds a lot in rye bread. Anyway, you could probably use fresh. I just decided that I would dehydrate them. It took a few hours. And then now I'm going to immediately rehydrate them, which is why I think probably you could have used them to begin with. I have a half cup of water in that small saucepan. Bring it to a boil and then turn it down very low and let it simmer for 15 minutes. It will rehydrate them, but it will also sort of sterilize them. Any bacteria or molds or anything like that might have been clinging to the chilies will be killed off before you put it in the cheese. And it's a 2-step addition to the cheese. You strain this and add the liquid first, and then later on the seeds and the bits of chili get added back into the curd. But let's get started here. If you've watched enough of my cheese videos in the past, you know that my favorite way of warming the milk up is to use a hot water bath. I have an old canner here, and in the bottom of the canner I have the rack that you would put your jars in if you were going to be putting them in a hot water bath. That just keeps this large stainless steel pot up off the bottom, off of any direct heat. And then I have water enough that it comes up, I don't know, less than halfway, I guess. I just turned it on. Turned the gas on under it, so I've got a ways to go. Registering, going down all the time. About 47, 46 degrees, and it has to come up to 84. And we're talking Fahrenheit, of course. The first thing that you add is calcium chloride. I have my ladle here so I can stir it in. You add calcium chloride to make a stronger curd. You do it with pasteurized milk. It isn't necessary to do it if you're using raw milk. But I have 1 teaspoon of calcium chloride for 4 gallons of milk. Just stir that in. And as I said, it's 4 gallons of milk. That's roughly 16 liters. For each gallon of milk, you get roughly a pound of cheese. So this should produce in the area of 4-pound cheese. So I will bring you back when it's up to temperature. Still waiting for the milk to get up to temperature, but I have the chilies prepared, and I'm going to put the liquid in now. And reserving the other part of it, the chilies and the seeds to add later on. I guess you can read that. It's reached 86.1 degrees, so that's close enough for me. I took it out of the hot water bath, keeping it handy though, because we'll probably need it to be put back in it at some point. Raise the temperature from one of the other processes. And next you add 2 sachets, little envelopes, of direct set mesophilic culture. C101 it's called. The recipe will be down below, and the recipe is from cheesemaking.com, also the company that I buy my cheese making supplies from, so that's why this is referred to as C101. That's their designation for it. I don't think I mentioned earlier, everything was sanitized. I don't boil or, to sterilize or whatever. I use a dairy sanitizer. That's usually the same thing that's used in professional dairies. So all of the equipment that I'm using has been sanitized. Now that's allowed to hydrate briefly on the surface here for a minute or so, and then I will stir for a minute or so to stir it in. Cover it and let it sit at this temperature for 30 minutes. So I will bring you back after this has had 30 minutes to ripen and get the culture activated. A little over halfway through the ripening process here, and I just checked the temperature to make sure it was still up to the target temperature, and it is. It's still up to 86 degrees. I have said that I'll put the link down below to the recipe that I'm following, and that I will do. You won't find in that recipe write-up anywhere a recipe for 4 gallons of milk. I think it starts with one for a gallon of milk. No, 6 gallons. Starts with one for 6 gallons. I don't have a pot large enough where I'd do that. And then it steps that down. It tells you how to do a 2-gallon one. So all I'm doing is I took the 2-gallon recipe and doubled it, which you can do with any cheese recipe. You just multiply it up or divide it down depending on the size that you want to make. So that explains why it's not actually there, but if you have a container large enough, you could make either a 6-gallon, which would give you 6 pounds of cheese, or a 2-gallon one, which would give you 2 pounds of cheese. But we'll come back after this has finished. It has about 9 minutes to go, I guess. Well, it's had its 30 minutes, and it didn't lose its heat at all, maybe because I kept it covered, I guess. Now you add a teaspoon of rennet, either vegetable rennet or animal rennet. I'm using an animal rennet, and I've diluted it in 1/4 cup of water. And this time I've got to remember to take this ladle out. Last time I made cheese, I just hung it back on the edge of the kettle, and of course it was sealed in there when it came time to cut the curd. Just going to stir this in an up and down motion for a minute here. Cover it and let it set for 40 minutes. So I'll bring you back in 40 minutes when hopefully we have a nice firm curd ready to be cut. It's had its 40 minutes, and now I'm going to cut it into a grid of 1-inch spacing. If you've seen me do this before, I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. I'll continue cutting all the way across in this direction, and then I will turn and go in this direction until it's cut into a grid of 1-inch squares. At that point, you let it settle for about 3 minutes, and that is supposed to help it retain the fat in the milk so that it won't all come out into the way. And then after that, I use a whisk to cut it into smaller pieces of curd. So I'll bring you back after I have cut it and it has rested for 2 or 3 minutes. Well, it's had its rest, and now over about a 5-minute period, I slowly, using a wire whisk, cut the curds into roughly 1/2-inch pieces. It's hard to be that accurate, but it says roughly 1/2 inch. And I won't make you watch for 5 minutes. I'll bring you back after I have finished this and show you what the product looks like at that point. If you hear something off to the side there, it's the flame going under a stock pot. I'm heating up a good amount of water to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's what's needed in one of the future processes here. Well, I've just finished with my wire whisk cutting the curds into roughly 1/2-inch curds. And now you stir gently by the clock for 15 minutes, breaking up any larger curds that come to the surface when you're stirring. So I'll bring you back in 15 minutes time. Well, I've been stirring gently for almost 15 minutes. The timer's about to go off. There we go. Now I'm going to let it settle for just a couple of minutes or so to let most of the floating curds, I always seem to have some on top that never want to sink. I'm not quite sure what that means. But after it has settled for a minute or two, I'm going to remove 1/3 of the whey. And I'll bring you back after I've done that. Well, that's about 1/3 of the whey removed. And any of the curd that ended up in the whey, I ran the whey through a strainer and brought the curd back. Put it in the pot here so I didn't lose any of the curd. Now over a 15-minute period, I add 130 degree water, stirring constantly, until I have the temperature of the whey up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's 130 degree water added until the whey is up to 102 degrees Fahrenheit. Bring you back at that point. Well, that was a little longer than 15 minutes getting it up to 102, but it's at 102 now. And now you stir gently for 30 minutes. And that, thankfully, is the last of the stirring process. And I suppose you're attempting to maintain the 102 temperature. It didn't actually say that, but that's what I'm going to do. And once I finish this and start adding the pepper, chili paste and seeds and whatever back into this, it's no longer following the recipe that is the link below the video here. I'm now following a book by the same person who wrote the recipe that's in the, oh, there's a large clump there. The same person who wrote the recipe that I'm doing here, but it tells you what to do if you're going to add chilies or if you're going to add caraway or whatever. So at that point we will be moving on to a different bit of a process. You can continue following that one if you want to do this without peppers. If you want to do it with peppers, try to follow what I'm doing, I guess. It isn't greatly different. It's just that without the peppers, you would try to fill the mold under the whey. And with the peppers, you drain off the whey and mix the peppers in and fill the mold as quickly as possible because you don't want it to cool down. Once you've done that, the process once again is the same, so it isn't that much difference. Bring you back in a half hour. We're working as fast as possible here. I don't want it to cool down. I have drained off more than 90%, I would say, of the way. There's still some in there. I'm adding in the hot peppers, mixing them in as well as possible. Now I've got to get this in my cheesecloth lined mold, and I'll bring you back and show you that when I finish, because I don't think there's any way I can work at doing this and take a video at the same time. I drop a camera down in there or kick it over on the floor, one or the other. So I'll bring you back when I'm ready to put it under some pressure here. Well, there it is in the mold, and this time I managed to use all of the curd. The last cheese that I made, I think it was a Swiss cheese that I made, I thought I couldn't get all the curd in the mold, and consequently the cheese was too light because I wasted part of the curd. It's under 10 pounds of pressure now for 15 minutes. And then I take it out and turn it, and I forget exactly what the next amount of pressure is, but I'll tell you that when the time comes, I guess. I'm using something that is new to me. It's a plastic cheesecloth, which technically I guess is not a cloth at all, is it? A cloth made out of woven material or whatever. I think I'm going to like it. Now I haven't even had it out to turn it yet or not, but it seems to be thinner, lighter than cheesecloth, easier to use in the mold. I have to be careful that this doesn't tilt the wrong way until it gets most of the way out of the curd. And it is, they're selling it, the cheese making supply company that I buy everything from here, are selling it as a disposable, like one-time use. 5 yards of it for not very much money, $3 or $4, something like that. But a lot of the comments that were left, a lot of the comments that were left from people that have used it is they're rinsing it out, washing it off, and then sanitizing it and using it again. And you know, unless it tears or whatever, I don't see any reason why you couldn't use it several times. My mold is going to lose its weight here if I don't do some adjusting. There we go, I guess. Anyway, I'll bring you back when the 15 minutes are up and it's time to turn this thing. It's had its 15 minutes at 10 pounds pressure. Hopefully that consolidated it enough so that I can take it out and turn it. Yeah, seems to be quite firm. See the little chili peppers everywhere. They're just turned and back in the mold. I think I really do like this plastic cheesecloth. It now goes under 16 pounds of pressure for 30 minutes. So I'll bring you back in 30 minutes time. Well, thankfully after this time it becomes easier to balance the weights on the top here. I'm using the lid off of that large stainless steel 5-gallon pot. But from now on in, it's only one weight. So that's easy, much easier to balance. And you can see what I'm doing. So that was a half hour at 16 pounds. Cheese still feels very warm. It's a nice solid ball now. You haven't got to Haven't got to handle it quite so gently. Luckily, with this mold so far anyway, the top of the follower has been above the cheese mold, so I can continue to put, I don't know the next weight will push that down below, and I'll have to put something else down in there or not. But the next time anyway, right now it is 30 minutes at 25 pounds. Once I get that balanced on there, it should be alright, I guess. So I'll bring you back in 30 minutes time. It's half hour at 25 pounds. Once again, it gets flipped and rewrapped. This time it goes back under 25 pounds of pressure, but for 6 to 8 hours. So a much longer pressing. And I'll bring you back when it has finished that. Well, I guess I sort of split the difference. I let it go for 7 hours at 25 pounds of pressure. And now the weight has been removed. Remove the cheese and remove it from the cloth, the plastic as it is, I guess, in my case, and you return the cheese to the mold. Adjust that a little better than that, yeah. And it goes in a room or somewhere that is 50 degrees, that's about 10 degrees Celsius, overnight. For me, that will be in the cheese fridge. That's the temperature that I'm running the cheese fridge at anyway, because that's the temperature that this ages at. So it will go in the cheese fridge overnight, staying in the mold, and tomorrow morning it will be brined. I don't have to make a brine because I have one that I saved from the last time I made cheese. It's only been used once. But there are instructions if you follow the link below the video, if you don't know how to make a brine for these. It shows you how to make one. I'm going to get mine out. It's been storing now for over a month. And I will bring it to a boil and then shut the heat off and let it cool overnight. Just bring it to a boil in the case there's any bacteria or anything in it to kill that off. But it's a heavy salt brine, and there wouldn't be anything, I don't think, alive in there anyway. But anyway, this is going in the cheese fridge for the night, and I'll see you in the morning when it's time to put it in brine. Well, it says to brine it for 4 hours per pound, and I just weighed. This is a little less than 4 pounds. 3 pounds, almost 3 pounds 14 ounces, so a couple of ounces less than 4 pounds. So I'm going to brine it for 16 hours, 4 pounds by 4 hours per pound, 16 hours. And since it is not under the brine completely, I will flip it over at the 8-hour point. So I'll bring you back after it has been brined. Well, the brining has finished, and I've patted it dry, and now it air dries. Well, in the instructions it says before you wax it, but I'm not going to wax it. I'm going to vacuum seal it anyway. And very strange. As I have said previously in this video, I'm sort of following two recipes. One in a book written by the owner of the website, Ricky Carroll, and the other recipe I printed off the cheesemaking.com website, which she owns, and there are incredible differences. The book says to air dry it at 50 degrees for 3 weeks, and the one online says to air dry it for 3 to 7 days. I'm going to do the 3 to 7 days, and 50 degrees is what I have my cheese fridge set at, so I'll be doing that in the cheese fridge. I'll turn it over, oh, I don't know, at least daily, I guess. It's on a plate, and the plate has 2 or 3 cheese mats down below it just to give an air space below it so that it will age on the bottom as well. So I will bring you back when I vacuum seal this, and once I vacuum seal it, I'll put the video up, because it will then age for about 3 months before I cut into it. The shape is it's called an Edam mold that I use for Edam cheese, which I've never made, but that is the shape of it. I like the thickness is what I'm after. My cheeses in the past have been, wider but not as thick, and I like the height or the thickness of this particular size. So I'll bring you back in a few days' time when I vacuum pack it. Well, the cheese has been air drying in my cheese fridge for 3 days, and it's turned a nice golden color with the flecks of the hot chili peppers all through it, and it's quite nice and dry, so I'm going to vacuum pack it. I think I've said before, I've given up on waxing. I don't have much luck with waxing. I tend to get cracks or holes in the wax or whatever, and mold produces in there. So I'm going to vacuum pack. Once again, I have made you make these bags. It's just a tube to start with, and you seal off one end, and then the other end ready to put your product in. But I make them intentionally way too big. In the past, I have tried to make them what I thought was, going to be a good size, and it's too small. Well, too big you can still use, too small is useless. So I go with the too big. I like this little sealer. I've only had it for a short period of time, and it's not one of the most expensive ones or anything. It seems to do a good job. Well, that is it. I sealed it. I didn't show you all of the bloopers. For some reason I had difficulty getting it to do that. I had to make another bag. And now it has taken all the air out perfectly and sealed it. It would just continue to pump and wouldn't seal the bag. So I guess whatever the problem was, I've solved it and don't know how I solved it. Well, this will conclude this video on making this cheese. It won't be ready to eat until early December. I'll put it back in the cheese fridge at around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'll turn it over every couple of days until then, and keep an eye on it to make sure there aren't any nasty molds that grow on the surface. But with this vacuum sealing, I'm finding it quite satisfactory in that area anyway. So I will get this up and posted, and when it's time to sample this, I'll do another short video showing what it's like. Thank you very much for watching.